Story 1. This happened to me quite recently, and I thought it belonged here. For context, I am currently in my second year of university, studying to be a veterinarian. I study in my home country, Bulgaria, but I am studying in English as I spent most of my life in the United Kingdom. Because of that, the professors all teach in English, though some of them don't speak it that well. Additionally, I am a very slow writer, but a very fast typer. The main cast includes me and the professor. It was our second lesson, and the professor demanded we write down all the slides word for word, since she would want the pages back later as our homework for proof that we had done some sort of studying. I was sitting there just taking pictures of the slides since I knew I typed slowly and didn't want to be the person who says, "Wait, I'm not done yet," to make the whole class wait. About 3 slides in, the professor comes up to me and starts berating me. The conversation was in Bulgarian, so it's a little paraphrased. "Professor, why aren't you writing? You need to submit these if you want to pass this unit." Me, "I'm taking pictures. I'll write them up when I get home." "Professor, sure you will. You better start writing now before I kick you out." Me, "I write really slowly. I don't want to slow down the class." "Professor, rubbish. You just want to get out of doing any work. One more word and you can just take your things and leave." Me, "Fine then." After that, I started writing. The PowerPoint presentation was about 60 full slides, and our usual lesson time is 2 hours 3 to 5. Every time she switched the slide, I was only about halfway through it, so I politely asked, "Would you go back so I can finish writing?" She moaned the first few times and eventually got so annoyed that she actually came to check my writing and indeed saw that I was only about halfway through. After she came to check, she kept an eye on me to see if I was writing slowly on purpose, or if I was indeed slow, and saw I was giving it my all. Once the lesson was done and everyone walked out, she came to me and said, "You can take pictures, but I better see them written up at the end of the semester, or I will fail you." I just said, "No problem," and ran to catch up to my classmates. Story 2. Another post reminded me of this. This story is almost 2 decades old, so details are not precise. When I was in college, as many people do, I lived in a dorm. Now, my college had 3 different groups of dorms, one that was in the main set of buildings that was mostly seniors, one that was mostly sophomores and juniors, and one that was almost all freshmen. The freshman dorm area had beds that were fixed to the walls, desks fixed to the walls, and built-in bookcases. It also only had one common room for about 150 students, paired 2 to a room, and only one microwave in the common room. We weren't, ostensibly, allowed microwaves in the rooms. It makes sense, there were false fire alarms frequently from burnt popcorn in the lounge area. I can only imagine what horrors a bunch of 18-year-olds would concoct in their rooms if they were blithely allowed microwaves. Most people just went along with it while grumbling. But oh, not me. I was complaining one day about the rule and how those of us who weren't foolish could handle a simple microwave. The resident assistant overheard, laughed, and said I was welcome to try and find a way around it, but she'd never found one. Being the nerd I am, though, I went and read the handbook in detail. On page 59, it said no microwaves, but literally on page 60, it said, "Any appliance under 1,000 watts is allowed." So I found a microwave that was under that pathetic little thing at 500 watts, granted in a Walmart advertisement. I took the ad and handbook to her boss, the resident's life director. To her chagrin, she had to admit that any appliance under 1,000 watts was allowed. And the handbook did say any appliance, after all. She agreed to let me have my microwave as long as I didn't let the rest of the students in on the trick. I agreed. I also talked my way into only getting charged for a double when my roommate moved out a semester later, and I should have been charged for a single. I simply explained to her that since I was paying my own way through college, I couldn't afford it. It was hardly my fault my roommate wanted to move to the party dorm, and the person I was supposed to move in with refused to respond to my repeated calls and notes slipped under the new room's door. Note, she wasn't living in the new room yet either. We were both being reassigned to it. I just didn't want to move into an antagonistic environment, after all. She saw it was me, laughed, and since no one really wanted to move into this crummy little mayhem dorm, she just waived the extra fee. Story 3. It's been a while, but I never really told anyone, And it turns out I'm still kind of upset about it, so be warned it'll be a bit ranty. I was working short-term contracts via an agency at the time to experience different fields and earn some cash while I looked for something more permanent. I got this one contract at a health center. I showed up on my first day and had a hard time getting a hold of my new boss, so I just waited around awkwardly, asking around for her. When I finally met her, she was a stressed person, constantly walking and talking fast and barely listening. I asked what work I was supposed to do, but she said she had no time for me, so she gave me a stack of papers and asked me to make as many copies as possible. The social workers use them all the time, and we can literally never have too many. I didn't even have time to wonder if I had any questions before she was gone. The copies were bad, some were faded, and others were poorly cropped. I tracked down the originals or the earliest copies possible to improve the quality of the booklets as much as possible and made a ton of copies. It was mind-numbing work, and I was bored out of my mind. After over 60 hours of copying the same stuff, I was mentally exhausted and quite frankly miserable. The copies stacked up at first, but it turned out it was because the social workers did not know they could use them. They didn't want to steal someone else's stuff, so when I explained I was filling my time with that while my real job was explained to me and that these copies were free for all, they were ecstatic and grateful. The good news spread and lifted everyone's spirits, making my mental misery and countless paper cuts worthwhile. That ended when my boss finally took the time to explain the project she had actually hired me for. The health center wanted to maximize the use of the meeting rooms and needed me to watch how they were being used. She wanted to know when people got in and out of the rooms and what they were using them for. This was to track the downtimes and maybe even rent out some meeting rooms to outsiders. I asked how exactly I was supposed to do that since I couldn't be on 3 different floors at the same time and watch them from end to end among multiple corridors. She said she didn't know and to figure it out, and she ignored me and walked out on me. I was dumbfounded, but I complied. I honestly still have no idea how I was supposed to accomplish that. The best solution I found was to walk all the corridors in a loop. One loop took roughly 8 to 13 minutes, 13 when I started, 8 as I built cardio and muscles. I took a few minutes breaks so each loop started every 20 minutes. That way, I'd have an idea of the room usage. I intended to eventually compile the information on the computer, likely my personal one since I had no equipment assigned to me. So for months, I walked. I was used to desk jobs. My feet at first were swollen and everything hurt. I was tired, dead tired, when I finished work. But that was actually the upside. I had never had such nice legs and booty. I became fitter and my pants looked really good on me. The downside was that it created a hostile work environment. The health workers using the rooms felt hawked and watched. To them, I was basically a spy from management. I had their names and activities with time logs and room numbers. You couldn't tell easily if a room was in use, so I literally had to bend over to see if there were feet inside via the non-glazed portions of the glass panes when there were any. I couldn't always tell who had used what room. It was awful. Everyone hated me. I became depressed. There was no one I could talk to. My boss basically ignored and avoided me, and she was my only point of contact. I tried to be friendly and nice, but I was still pretty much just hated. I made the mistake of reading an article on the Palestine and Israel conflict, something I knew little about at the time. Since I couldn't finish the article in one go, I left the newspaper open on that page while I hurried through my round, and when I came back, a doctor was upset and crying, saying something about how it was on purpose since the newspaper was open on that page. I have no idea why it was wrong to read a newspaper article, and I was already hated, so I just walked away bewildered. The following day, my only comfort at work disappeared. It was a tiny teaspoon beautifully decorated that had accompanied me throughout my university years. It was a source of comfort to me, like a teddy bear or a warm blanket in that cold place where I didn't belong and wasn't welcome. I was so upset. I literally made wanted lost posters and still, no one ever gave it back. I had foolishly run out of time after drinking my coffee and left it in my mug while I hurriedly made a round. In the few minutes I was gone, it had disappeared. Honestly, I missed being chained to the photocopy machine at that point. At least people actually appreciated what I did back then, and I was not hated. Mercifully, I found a permanent job downtown with very good conditions, So I gave my notice, at which point my boss finally made time for me. I could almost swear she had been avoiding me until then, and any interaction was cut short by her mumbling something or other without paying attention to what I was saying and fast walking away. At this point, she asked to see what I'd done. I explained my reasoning and showed her my piles of data accumulated for almost 3 months by then. She was shocked. "This is useless," she said. I wanted to smirk. I wanted to roll my eyes. Honestly, what did she expect? She wasn't wrong, though. It was useless data. Columns and columns of data coded in simple letters and scribbled notes. Completely unreliable since even as I was taking the notes, I had no way of confirming if anyone was really in the room or not. "Well, this is the best I could do with the resources and guidance I was given," I said and shrugged. "Not my problem. Honestly, I just wanted out." She was shocked and angry, and I didn't care. I had been paid to walk 8 hours a day. My very presence made everyone hate management. I was never so happy to leave a job. Things were looking up. I never looked back. I still disliked that place. A social worker there stole my custom-ordered books from Japan. She never answered my calls when I tried to reach her about it. She had an address where she could drop them and multiple phone numbers she could use to reach me. All that information I had also taped inside the books. She just ignored me and kept them, even though she said she didn't like them. What on earth? I was young, naive, and I believed her to be trustworthy because of her job and the impression she gave off. Many regrets were had. My Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind collection remains pilfered to this day. But hey, got fit, got paid, and frustrated the hated management. I'd have left with my middle fingers held up if I didn't have a bunch of bags and a bus pass to carry. Story 4. Just like you take a car to a mechanic when it breaks, you take a sewing machine to a repairman when it stops sewing. And just to be nice, we clean and polish the outside of the machine so it looks brand new. The entitled parent in this story is a mother with a stroller and a bottle of formula, and she's here to pick up her machine after it's been repaired. We grab her the machine and she says, "That's not the right one. Mine is much dirtier than that." Store. "Yeah, we clean it for you when you bring it in." Do you think I'm an idiot? I know what you did. You just bought a new sewing machine to replace my old one because you couldn't figure out how to fix it. Here, I'll show you what we fixed on it. No, that's not my machine. You people are scam artists. Is anything you do real? Then, because she's mad, she puts her bottle of formula on top of some fabric. Our fabric is stored on small round tables that hold about 60 of them, so it is a somewhat flat surface. You need to take that formula off of the fabric. It may stain it. Then, because she's so smart, she dumps out the bottle of formula over the fabric and storms out. Since we had all of her information from her sewing machine ticket, we sent it to the police and got our money back. Rough calculations in today's currency, $4,000.